Hey, Dan Passarelli here. Well, we're closing out the day down just a smidgen. S&P 500 closing down 0.37%, with the SPY ending the day at 669.12. Little bit of a pullback. You'd think there could be some room for more. Why do I say that? Well, working backwards here, starting at the bottom, RSI was above 70 and crossed down below it. That typically means at least a couple of days worth of follow through to the downside. But kind of a bigger deal is the VIX at 1724. Now that's certainly elevated. That means that there's a lot of concern out there. On top of that, we have gold up 0.8% today in the futures, the GLD TF up just 0.5%. But these gold futures are showing over 4,000. That's an important number for the spot gold. And that is a pretty strong indication that there have been some concerns. Let's talk about some of the key news that came out over the last couple of days. Now, first of all, there was that OpenAI AMD deal, which that was yesterday's news. You probably read about it already. But some pretty big industry news that maybe you have, but maybe you haven't, but I want to expand upon it a little bit here, is that the Intercontinental Exchange, ICE, has decided to purchase $2 billion of Polymarket. $2 billion equity stake in Polymarket. Now, you might be saying, what the heck is Polymarket? Well, we talked about Polymarket and some of its friends recently. Let's take a look if it's something that you are not super familiar with. So Polymarket is, it's almost a gambling site. Now, you would think, why would an exchange invest in a gambling site? And I think there are some people asking that question as well. But let's take a closer look at what it all means. On Polymarket, you can trade what are called binary options, or some people say binary futures. They're not really options or futures. They're event contracts where they either expire in the money or out of the money. It's a yes or no is what you're gambling on. And yes gives you the full value of the contract, and no means they expire worthless. Now, a lot of the things that you can, we can say gamble on, invest in is not the right terminology, but a lot of things that you can buy a contract in, I guess we should say, are things that do have an economic outcome. Like, will the government end the shutdown based on these days or some other day? What's important about these, especially for things that have an economic impact, like an important political event, government shutdown end, Fed decision, will Congress pass a funding law? These things have economic consequences. They can, at least in theory, and even in practice, be used as a hedge in real life. Not to mention, we can look at these contracts and get an idea of what the percentage likelihood of such event occurring is. Like, for example, the Fed decision for October, a 25 basis point decrease, 89% likelihood. Now, all of a sudden, we've got some real hard numbers that we can use to make our own trading decisions on anything from covered calls on the S&P 500 to whatever. But there are also things like sports betting that you can do on there. Culture. Which song Taylor Swift's The Life of a Showgirl will be highest ranking? I mean, now you might say, Dan, why do you think that ICE invested a $2 billion stake in Polymarket? And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. From Polymarket's point of view, they have been limited by the U.S. government because they sure kind of come across as a gambling site. and the CFTC has put some limitations on them. This gives Polymarket credibility and credence and maybe even a legal or a compliance in with the CFTC. What does ICE get out of it? Well, this is kind of big business, and the contracts are designed in such a way that is very, very conducive with how an exchange is run. So, could it be you've got the chocolate, I've got the peanut butter, let's make a Reese's peanut butter cup? It kind of does appear so. This is Dan Passarelli. Hope that helps. Trade smart.